Okay, Scott, welcome to the VTCLA Podcast. And we'd first like to I'm here with Mike Barry, my co-host and co-president of VTCLA. Scott, please introduce yourself and tell us just a little bit about how you landed where you've landed.
Well, yeah, thanks, Jeff and Mike, for having me on for this inaugural podcast. So I'm Scott Thompson. I'm the Director of Curriculum in Franklin West Supervisory Union, and just finishing up my third year in this position. And it's been wonderful and rewarding. It's been an interesting path to this position for me, and I would say a bit non-traditional. So I came to college in Vermont. I went to Johnson State College and studied environmental science, and thought I was going to make the world a better place through environmentalism, and graduated, and job economy wasn't great, and ended up getting a job as a paraprofessional at Shelburne Community School, and instantly fell in love with kids. I hadn't worked with kids in the past. I was placed on a middle school team and just fell in love. And just within the first week, I said, oh, I really missed my calling. Immediately went back to school. I enrolled in the master's program at St. Michael's College and did my program through them. And really that set me on my journey. That really was the beginning of my compass, my North Star, if you will, and spent a couple years as a paraprofessional, and then various teaching jobs throughout Vermont, and had a chance to apply to be an assistant principal at Milton Middle High School, which I did, and I loved every minute of that, and sort of moved into principalship there as well, and learned so much about systemic change that I never knew as a teacher, and sphere of impact and managing people and policy. And it really was an eye-opening experience, and I loved every second of it. I loved the community. And then I guess I got burnt out. Like, just everything felt difficult. And when you don't have that passion as a leader, it's time to step away. And I don't want to say I lost my passion, but it definitely wasn't at the top of my thinking. And at the time, I also had a young child. And so principal, husband, father doesn't really go well in the same sentence. And had an opportunity to work for the Tarrant Institute of Innovative Education at UVM. And it was wonderful. I love everything about that as well. It gave me a chance to think about systemic impact in ways that being a principal or an administrator didn't allow me to think. And I really learned from people in the field, my colleagues, and saw lots of great things, and learned about how people's stories really impacted their work. And it really reinvigorated that passion for school change for me. And the one interesting piece about the Tarrant Institute is, one day you could be in Bennington, next day you could be in the Northeast Kingdom, next day you could be in another city. And I really missed that sense of connection with the school community. And that's what really drove me back to thinking about going back into public education. And at the time, there was a couple curriculum director jobs open, and applied for them all, and interviewed here at Franklin West. And much like my paraprofessional experience, I love the questions that they asked me here. I love the perspective that they shared, and it really gelled with my personal philosophy, and promptly pulled my application from the other two schools. And I was lucky enough to be offered the position here. And I should say, I followed in the amazing footsteps of Linda Keating, who really left a well-oiled, highly functioning machine. And so I'm not so sure that there could have been a better scripted handoff. But yeah, kind of a long, winding journey, but I'm here now and loving it.
Yeah, I should mention that our paths first crossed through your work in Tarrant. You worked with a couple of the schools in our district, and so you and I have had quite a few experiences through some different lenses. And I like the work that you did with Tarrant. And should we have a little time at the end, maybe we can talk a little bit about how that Tarrant experience has influenced the work you're doing now, and some of the things that you were able to see across the state in terms of takeaways and trends. Mike, do
Yeah.
you want to ask the next?
Yeah, Scott, that was an amazing story, actually. That's really cool. I didn't know a lot of that about you. You brought up two things that really stood out in your story. A couple times you mentioned the word systemic impact or systemic change. What are the big three things that you and your school district are working on moving into next year around that kind of level of thinking?
Yeah, love that question. I have to limit it to three, huh? Well, I'll just say that before I answer the question, the real thing for me about systemic changes, time and time again, I've seen initiatives or work built around one person, and then that person leaves, and all of the investment and learning leaves the system with that person. And so for me, building a system, so it doesn't matter who comes and goes or who's sitting in the leadership position, that the work has a longevity and it's sustained, is really important to me. And for us, I don't know that it's really still a reframing from COVID, but from a curriculum perspective, in Franklin West, we have 3 different towns, Georgia, Fletcher, and BFA Fairfax, and really 5 schools because BFA has an elementary, a middle, and a high school. And, COVID pushed a lot of isolation. It forced people to make some priority decisions with all good intentions, from remoteness. The year I came on was our first full year back post-COVID, but still solidly in the throes of COVID. I remember swabbing students for COVID at 6:30 in the parking lot, which was an interesting experience. But so back to your question, Mike, systemically, we're working on sort of a universal curriculum and realigning that. Bits and pieces had seen greater influence, and some of it is based on what people could do at the best of their time, and sort of taking a step back and looking at the 30,000 foot level of saying all second graders, regardless of their zip code, should have this set of experiences, and really getting back to that commonality. I would say that is our first piece of, sort of the written curriculum and the taught curriculum across all schools are really aligned, which connects back to what, Act 173. The other piece that we've been building upon and forecasting for next year is, we know that the written curriculum isn't the thing that makes the biggest difference for kids. It's the high quality instruction. And so a lot of our COVID money has been put towards professional development. And I think we've really positioned ourselves next year for professional development of really looking at our instruction pre-K through 12 across all disciplines, and coming back to that common agreement of we agree on these set of things as high quality instruction for our universal layer. And we've had lots of conversations with teachers of just saying, like, bringing back things like personalization and differentiation, really looking at data to inform instruction and giving people time and support really feels like the thing that people are asking for, and the thing that our data is leading us to, of saying, we do a really good job with this particular set of learners, but not these. How do we make sure that we meet their needs? And really, it's the two ends, the students that do really well and the students that struggle, that we really have to do a better job of figuring out how to meet their needs. We do pretty well with the middle. But again, we say that all means all. And so when we talk about all students, we mean each and every single student. We have to make sure that we're meeting their needs. And then the other piece that I don't know that you can talk about instruction without talking about assessment. But our last sort of systemic piece that we're investing in is moving back towards some common formative assessments. It's, again, with curriculum taking different lanes and different perspectives based on where you were or what you were doing, the formative assessments changed. And so when we bring teachers together from across different buildings, we want them to be able to have a conversation that connects with each other, not just I'm sharing what I did, you share what you did, and we have no common connection. But we can say we all taught the same unit, relatively close. We gave the same formative. It changes the conversation when we both had a common experience, a common anchor point. And so we're really looking forward to investing in that. It feels daunting at the same time. Pre-K through 12. Literacy, math, science, social studies, art, PE, music, drama, theater, all of the pieces are important. And so, yeah, it's a bit ambitious, but that's part of who I am. So we're really looking to, I don't like the word institutionalize, but whether I'm sitting in this seat doing this work or someone else, that the work doesn't have to reset if there's a change or a different position coming in. And we've also had a lot of turnover. I don't know about other schools, but we're having new educator groups of 40 at a time over the last 3 years, and that's 120 new educators in our system. That's a big change. And so we need to make sure that we can move forward no matter what.
Yeah, 40 at a time, that is a significant number. And then sort of reinforces the point you made about the need to build systems that aren't person dependent. So, the audience is largely VTCLA members, and we like to share practices that are happening throughout the state that will have some meaning to the folks who are members. And so we want to talk a little bit about your recent presentation at the League of Innovative Schools about proficiency-based learning, flexible pathways, and I think with a special focus on the high school. But if you could tell us about that work and share some of the nuggets and the insights that you think will be helpful to our members.
Yeah, absolutely. So way prior to me, our former superintendent, Ned Kirsch, had Franklin West Supervisory Union join the League of Innovative Schools. And it was at a time when, innovation was a top priority for many schools and trying to figure out how to stay relevant. And it really was Ned's leadership that brought that membership. And our current superintendent, John Tague, sort of reinvigorated that connection with the League of Innovative Schools. And he and I both had attended a couple league conferences, and then there was an opportunity to put forth a presentation where we could bring a group of our folks, including students, to talk about our work. And to be fully clear, this is work that started well before me and work that really lives with the teacher leadership and the principal leadership of BFA High School. I've had very little influence on this. This is really their work, and truly a celebration. And so Jensen Welch and Liz Noonan, Liz is our high school principal. Jensen is our one of our instructional coaches, and two students, Peyton and Ella, along with our superintendent, presented in New York City about the high school's proficiency work. And I think the thing that really made a difference is it really was about the student voice in this. It wasn't, here's what adults did and here's how students received it. It really was work that began in 2015, where we started having conversations about learning scales. What does that mean versus a traditional kind of piece? And, in addition to the way that you record, the way that learning happens, for proficiency, it's really about changing the instruction. And that really was the focus of the previous administration and Liz's administration now. And so the general time frame was like 2015, it was talking about learning scales, what do they look like. In 2016, it was really about bringing up the whole faculty up to what does proficiency-based instruction and assessment really look like, with a specific focus in ninth grade. 2017, it grew to that same conversation to include 9 and 10, as well as really talking about, well, if our instruction is changing and the way that we communicate about learning is changing, we should probably figure out how a new report card might look. And of course, all of this is based in Act 77. 2018, it became grade 9, 10, and 11. And then obviously 2020, the pandemic came. But what I think was the real difference maker in all of this work, and the thing that I think BFA Fairfax did extremely well, is in your sophomore year, you had to have an exhibition that was sort of like, we would use the word PLP, right? Where students had a chance to reflect on their learning over the 2 years, set some goals, and do it in front of an audience that they chose, right? It was, their advisor, they could invite, well, their families were a part of it. And right, it was new. It was new back then of putting students in the driver's seat of their learning. And I think that's the piece that really solidified this work, because it became students' work and not so much adults' work that was handed to students. Similarly, we have our senior exhibition, which some of them are happening right now. And it's the culmination of their 4 years, right? So it's tell us about your journey, tell us things you're proud of, what have you really learned about yourself, as well as your academic proficiencies, really through the lens of transferable skills. And I have to say, I've attended a few of them and I've cried at every one of them. The stories are so powerful, and parents just saying, I never knew that about my child. I never knew that about my son. I never knew that about my daughter. And it's really, that for us has been the anchor of, how do we involve our community in this work? And really, I come back to, it really was work that started in 2015 with the faculty, and really the teachers. I wouldn't say it was smooth sailing throughout the whole thing. From my understanding, I wasn't here, but it was the persistence, it was the pacing, it was the visionary leadership, and then adding the student voice to it. When students say, I can explain why I think I'm ready to graduate, that's a really powerful piece that, I wish more families and students and schools could experience.
I want to dig into a couple of things you said, if you don't mind. First of all, do sophomores still now do presentations? So this is happening twice in the 4 years. Okay.
That's correct.
And if they're this powerful, how do you structure it in a way that really does get at that deep reflection and introspection? Is it as simple as saying, tell us why you deserve to graduate?
If only, Jeff. So the high school really has a pretty robust advisory system. And I think that's really been the support mechanism through all of it. So each student has an advisor and an advisory that they travel with over the course of the 4 years. And really, it's a practice that's chipped away with, right? You start with small questions, you build the comfort level, you scaffold it for students. The sophomore exhibition is a little more low stakes. And it's that authentic audience that I think really puts students in a place to perform well. And, I think over the course of 4 years, chipping away at it, keeping it in the center of the conversation. In classes, it's kind of like, there's also support from classroom teachers too, of saying like, don't forget to really collect some evidence. Like, you are really proud of this piece you wrote. This should go into your website or your PLP. And so there's support from multiple places. And it's not just talked about twice in a high school career. It's talked about often. supported through advisory. And, students really, for the most part, look forward to these presentations. Obviously, they can be anxiety provoking, but they also get to choose who comes. And so maybe their best friend, it may be a teacher that they want. We've had parents who have been deployed who find a way to Zoom and watch their son or daughter's presentation, or they happen at 6 o'clock at night because that's the only time that group could be there. So yeah, it's really been the persistence, but I think the scaffolding really makes a difference.
Thanks. I also wanted to ask about something you said with the implementation, layering one grade level at a time, which from a systems perspective sounds really logical. Having done something similar in my old district, what we ran into is some complications with the faculty who are often teaching multiple grade levels. And so asking them to operate with two very different approaches to instruction and reporting really required some nimble shifts for us. And quite frankly, we struggled with supporting faculty during that time. Can you provide some insights on how that went for your group?
Yeah, only through people telling me stories, but really our math department, which surprised me, was the early adopter of this work. My experience would have not led me to think that math would have been the place that was the early adopter of proficiency. But so I agree. I think there were multiple issues of, I teach a 9th grade ELA 1 class, and I teach an 11th or 12th grade AP class. And so I have to operate in different systems. And I think you just have to name it and just say it's going to be messy for a couple of years. But I also think, again, from my understanding, it was an intentional decision to not take on too much change at the same time. And I think it speaks to the power of the way that we use time. And so the way that you structure department meetings, the way that you structure faculty meetings, you really needed to give a lot of time and space and support, and I'll be the first to tell you there was probably a lot of closed door conversations and perhaps intense discussions about, is this the right thing? Is this, is this going to go away? If I just ride it out a little longer. And, I'm glad to say that, even through change in leadership, coming back to that systemic implementation, even though people have changed, the work and the path has been really transparent and vigilant. And I would say Liz, the current principal, is doing a phenomenal job of keeping it afloat and sort of giving it the oxygen that it needs. It's not perfect, right? I mean, certainly, we had a chance to talk to Mike and his team, and right, it needs tweaking and improvement, but it's working better than it was, and hopefully next year it works even better than it does now.
That's what I'd like to ask about. Is it's working better than it was? What are some of the pedagogical improvements you've seen as a result of building this system?
Well, again, I think this is really Liz and Jensen's leadership, but the transferable skills have become the center of the conversation, and not so much the traditional content. The content is important and it matters, but if it's just the content without the lens of a transferable skill, meaning what do I do with this content? How do I interact with it? How do I communicate it? When you add in those transferable skills, I think it takes a whole different level of meaning and relevance, not only for the teachers, but for the students. Yes, we have people all the time that say, content matters, and I want my student to have a good GPA and to get into a good college. And those are all really important and really valid. And then I think, as I'm looking, I'll turn it, but there's a big transferable skill poster across from me that lives everywhere. They're in the hallways of the schools. I'm in central office. There's a BFA transferable skill poster here. It really has become the way that we talk about learning, is through the transferable skills to the content. I think it really makes, a difference when we talk about students and say, how are you going to solve this problem? It's not just, right. If we want people to be a democratic citizen, we have to give them an opportunity to practice in democracy, not just say, good luck, figure it out. But we have to provide those opportunities. And I think from a high school perspective, over the course of 4 years, the faculty has really come together. Of course, we all have opinions about what matters more, but it seems to be, it's been in place long enough where people have really changed. And I think, again, the lens of the transferable skill has amplified the importance of the content and given it a lane for an outlet.
I take it that lens is really reinforced in those exhibitions and the expectations around the scene. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think those exhibitions are organized around the transferable skills.
Yeah. Thanks.
That's great, Scott. And Scott's team did talk to our team, and it was just reaffirming to hear the work and hear about the challenges of keeping the work afloat too. You mentioned a lot of the systems that you were thinking about for next year. What's on your summer list? Like, what are you amping up to do as we transition in June to thinking about next year? This is, folks don't always know that at this point in the year, we're living in two worlds. We're living in finishing out this year and starting up next year. What's on your list?
Yeah. Well, I gotta say it's a super exciting list. I was just thinking about, boy, I should probably take a break somewhere, but half of me is wanting to take a break and half of me wants to keep my foot firmly on the gas pedal. So, well, we've just talked, right? Literacy has been a really big topic, and it should be. And we have a S204 literacy bill passed, and my understanding is the governor has signed it. We have been really focusing on that early primary literacy instruction through the Orton-Gillingham approach. And I know there's lots of conversations about the best way to teach reading and literacy. And not that OG is the magic wand, but the majority of our elementary school teachers have taken the OG training, and we're continuing to offer it over the summer. And it allows people coming back to our curriculum work to have a common conversation. Doesn't matter what side of the hallway you're on. And from a student perspective, whether I'm in Jeff's class or Mike's class, the routines are the same. The language is very similar. It's not like they have to learn the new rules because it's a new teacher. And our students are really responding positively to that. So we have some OG training happening all summer. We're offering 2 OGAP PD opportunities. So we're offering a additive reasoning the last week of June and a fractional reasoning the 3rd week of July to really support our teachers in multiple pieces. So I'm solely invested in supporting those professional development endeavors. For me personally, the summer is the time where I can dig back into all the curriculum documents that people have been working on throughout the year, including our early release, and go back and take them across the finish line if they haven't been there, support, respond to people's questions. And then my personal goal is to get them all published on our website so that our scope and sequence are fully transparent to our community. And I think it's a celebration of our teachers' hard work. It's not my work, it's their work. And, we get some questions from time to time about what our curriculum is, and those are welcome questions. Now by the end of the summer, we can point to our website and say, everything we do is right here. Please take a look, follow up with questions if you have. And so, I think for me personally, supporting PD, taking place in PD, like if I offer professional development, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to be an active participant. If I'm going to ask teachers to do it, I should be doing it as well. So I'll be partaking in those. And then I think the last thing for me is we've done a lot of MTSS work this year. And we, at the end of the year, we're giving a presentation for everyone, as Joelle Van Lent says, like, give it in doses, right? Like small little pieces, so you don't feel like you're getting hit by a train. And so we're going to get a lot of feedback from our faculty next week, and I'm really going to synthesize that over the summer too. And then I'm going to take some time off somewhere. Probably go to Maine, take a break, but yeah, I'm really invested in PD. I'm really invested in spending time working in those curriculum documents, and then yeah, take a break somewhere.
It's always funny. I joke with people, like, I think for most of my career as a curriculum director, I've forever been working on curriculum sites. Like, just, it's always there, and I always want to knock it out of the park. And it's something to do for sure. That's great, Scott. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm almost embarrassed to say that I've got a few curriculum sites that were never published, but I've got all that have like 6 different tabs open, of which all the ones that we were working on. So Scott, one of the reasons we're doing this podcast is to highlight and to share and to celebrate the work being done and the people doing the work. So let's close with an opportunity for you to shout out anybody you'd like in the world of curriculum.
Oh boy. Like many folks in education, I've worn many different hats and enjoyed them all. I have to say, I have never felt so supported and welcomed as a director of curriculum than I have in any other position, and not to knock any of those other opportunities. I almost feel like there's an MTSS system specifically for me in curriculum. And so, I think, Linda Keating certainly has been a mentor to me, and I followed her work long before I worked here. And she did amazing things and left things in great places. Jeff was my mentor my first year, and I still call on him to this day, as I know Jeff supports. I run into Mike quite a bit, and he's always willing to share and ask questions, and I appreciate that. And I would say that that's true for any curriculum director I've ever come across. Anytime I have a question, I feel safe and vulnerable to throw it out to the universe, to my colleagues, and people jump in immediately. Maybe it's a little unhealthy if you throw out a text at 8 o'clock on a Friday night, and by 8:05 you have 2 responses. But that's the piece for me. So it's every single curriculum director or anyone who serves in that capacity has really been great. VTCLA has been a safe place for me, to get together and talk about important things, to network. The Champlain Valley Curriculum Coordinator Group, which is more of a regional piece, really has been, I will say, I'll call up people and say, I have no idea what I'm doing here. I don't know. And they say, oh, well, let me walk you through it. And there's just been so much grace and kindness from every person that I've come across, no matter what their role, but just it's been a ton of support. And I'll even say, the title team at the Agency of Education, right? The AOE has its own challenges, but the folks at the title team have invested a ton of time and energy into me. And I think I understand at least half of the CFG application now, thanks to their work. But yeah, I can't really single out any one person. It's just been multi-layers of support for me. And anytime I've asked a question or had a need, there's been a line of people willing to take me through that challenge. And so I'm grateful. I couldn't imagine doing this role without that level of support.
Yeah, thank you. And, a few things there. Grace and kindness. Love that phrase. Also, now we can begin the search for that person out there who understands the other half of the CFG and see if we can connect you with them. But speaking of grateful, Mike and I are very grateful for you to come on and to share the work that you're doing, and to just be as good a colleague as you have been throughout all of the positions you named earlier, like this summer and the end of this school year, the beginning of next.
Yeah, well, thank you for the opportunity, and just having a conversation. I've learned a few things today too, so I'm grateful. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Scott.
Scott.